After dating Alex for a few months, we were having trouble making time for ourselves because we both had roommates. I thus agreed right away when he proposed that we spend the weekend at his family's summer home in New Hampshire. The roads were calm because it was winter, and as we passed the icy surroundings, I observed that most of the residents had left for the south, leaving house after dark and deserted. We were the only ones who appeared to be at home. This increased the excitement at the time. It seemed wonderful to spend a quiet, romantic weekend together. After we got into the house and unloaded the car, my boyfriend left me to turn on the heat because it was frigid outside. I was astounded by the house's enormity as I gazed about. It looked out onto the beach as soon as I entered the kitchen. I was looking out the window, throwing my arms around myself for warmth, when I noticed this woman standing on the walkway that led from the beach to the backyard. Despite the fact that it was below freezing outside, she was wearing a long red dress with lace and was not wearing a jacket. She gave me this expressionless glare. When I heard my boyfriend coming back, I turned to tell him about the woman, but when I turned around, she had vanished. According to him, it was most likely a local making sure there was no break-in at this residence. I don't know, something about that woman's attitude felt strange, but I made an effort to ignore her and enjoy my time alone with my lover. When I walked downstairs to get a glass of water in the middle of our first night there, I saw her standing there, that woman in the red lace dress, through the window. She was standing just in front of the window, staring in with the same vacant face. I dropped my drink and jumped back in fear when I saw her. I was at a loss for what to do and just stood there. Subsequently, the woman extended her elongated, pallid arm and made 2 quick knocks at the window with her elongated, bony index fingers. I fled away from there as soon as I sensed myself starting to fear and hurried upstairs to find my lover. Telling him what had happened, I was in a panic. After putting his hand on my shoulder and forcing me to sit on the bed, he examined my foot. My foot was bleeding from where I may have stepped on some shattered glass while fleeing. He gave me a tissue and instructed me to remain in that spot while he walked downstairs to see how the woman was doing. I entered the restroom and felt through the cupboard to find a Band-Aid. I thought my lover would be back when I got back, but when he wasn't, I felt nervous. As I went downstairs, I called his name, but he didn't answer. And then I heard this woman's high-pitched scream. Something about it simply didn't sound quite right. I made my way into the kitchen as fast as I could and then stopped. A huge rush of snowflakes was blowing inside through the open rear door. Tiptoeing over to the door, I yelled my boyfriend's name in a trembling voice and peered out. I called out for my boyfriend, Alex, when I noticed new footprints in the snow. Then I noticed her standing at the beach access path. It was the female wearing the red lace outfit. With the same expressionless glare, she gave me a quick glance before raising her hand and gesturing with her bony index finger. Subsequently, she knelt and raised an object from the earth. I was unable to see what it was past the hedgerow and the fence, but I could tell by the way she walked away that she was swinging it back and forth with her shoulders. Convinced that she had heard him, I cried out for Alex once again and sprinted outside into the snow. I turned as I heard my name shouted and saw Alex standing in the doorway, staring at me bewildered. He told me that after checking downstairs and finding no one there, he went to grab something from his truck. When he returned inside, he was unable to locate me, so he checked the kitchen and discovered me outside. We left early the next morning since I wouldn't stay in that house for another night. The woman in the red lace outfit was only seen by me. My boyfriend and I broke up shortly after, but the nightmare I had that night has stuck with me ever since. I find myself wondering what the woman in the red lace wants from me every time I look back to that winter. That was 2013, my senior year of high school. There was a custom among the high school kids in the town where I was raised. Everyone called it the frost, and it happened in the heart of winter. The regulations were straightforward. Whomever wished to take part had to show up at the wooded clearing at dawn, pay $20 into the pot, and wait for the child in charge that year to blow the whistle. Origami snowflakes in hundreds of different colors were concealed throughout the forest clearing. The object was to locate 10 snowflakes as quickly as possible, but they had to be of the same hue. The caveat was that players had to leave an article of clothing there once they found a snowflake. 10 items of clothing left behind, 10 snowflakes. The pot was won by the first player to return to the clearing with all 10 snowflakes and 10 clothing lighters. In addition to other rules on vests, t-shirts, sweaters, and the like, there was a one-jacket rule. It goes without saying that the weather was excruciatingly cold. It was -10 degrees outdoors and had snowed the night before. I was one of the surprisingly large 20 participants. I suppose the allure of $400 was greater than a brief moment of nudity and chill. The competition began all right. I had removed my coat, hoodie, and sweater after discovering 3 bright blue snowflakes. Now that I was just wearing my t-shirt, the cold was really starting to bite at my flesh. I saw others dash by in various states of undress and brandishing colorful snowflakes. They were laughing heartily, and I couldn't help but join in. After that, I heard another scream. Not the sort of scream one would make if they were having fun. It left me feeling fearful and numb at the same time. Following the sound, I came to a girl lying in the snow, only wearing a crop top and leggings. Blood was seeping down the side of her face, and both of her feet were bare. The girl was hidden behind the skeletal-looking trees. There were around 8 lime-green snowflakes in her palms. From their vantage point, though, it appeared as though they had been inserted. I had no idea what to do. I had no coat to cover her with, and I had no idea why she was acting strangely. I saw the matted blood in her hair as I knelt over her. It appeared to me that she had sustained a blow to the side of her head. Another piercing cry could be heard in the distance as I attempted to pick her up, and a few seconds later, I noticed a dark figure rushing past the woods. I knew right once that they weren't involved in the competition. I'm not sure how much I can say, but they raced out in front of me, and it was a male in his 40s. Although he gave off the impression that he didn't want to be there, his eyes were full of eagerness. With those demanding emerald eyes, he extended his hands to give me something and said, "Here, take it. But you have to give it to someone else when the time comes." Even though I didn't want to, I stole something from him since I was so hungry to win the frost, and I saw a flash of neon blue in his hand. With a look of both relief and guilt, he gave me a quick look before darting off into the trees. He'd given me a bloodstained rock and enough snowflakes to win. I hurriedly undressed 7 articles of clothing, scattering them everywhere so they didn't appear to be in one place. Regarding the bloodied rock, I removed my boot and concealed it within. The girl was then helped back toward the clearing by me after I somehow managed to make her conscious. I won the frost that year because I was the first one to return to the clearing with 10 stars. After receiving the $400, I went home and resumed my life. After being hospitalized, the girl and the other 2 people stated that someone had sneaked up on them and knocked them out. Every year, the frost persisted in spite of this. I made an effort not to think about the green-eyed man as the years went by, but on the frost's day, every year, I always seemed to have terrible things happen to me. Disturbing things. This year, events brought me back to that town and my former residence. I looked through my belongings and discovered the ancient, bleeding rock with the inscriptions I had attempted to ignore for the previous 10 years. 2013 was the year and my name that were carved on it. Although I dislike it, I am aware of what must be done. I am aware of how to stop it. The frost is approaching, and I must make sure I'm present to pass it on. Since my uncle had always lived a reclusive life, no one in my family was shocked when he moved to an isolated cabin in Alaska. He sent me cards on holidays and birthdays, and it was the only times I heard from him. I was so taken aback to learn that he had died and left the cabin to me. I took a plane to that location a few weeks later to see the cabin and see what I had recently inherited. I rented a truck and headed out there, realizing how remote my uncle's cabin was when the houses vanished and were replaced with a thick stand of forests. The closest town, residence, any indication of life was more than an hour distant for him. The trip was difficult since there was a growing snowstorm, and by the time I got to the narrow snow-paved path, I had to concentrate really hard to avoid sliding into the trees. After I parked the truck and looked in the mailbox, I discovered an envelope addressed to me that held the keys to the cabin and the nearby structures. It was from my uncle's attorney. As soon as I hurried into the cabin, the cold struck. I could not believe how much colder it was inside than outside. There was a constant buzzing sound and the lamp in the corner was flickering on and off. I heard the sound and realized it was the generator. Although the lawyer had informed me that it had been switched off, I reasoned that there might have been an error that led to it being left on. I took a look around the cottage. Despite its small size, it had everything my uncle could possibly require. There are blankets, old furniture, and an animal carved wood shelf. My uncle carved them and sold them at the town's weekly market, as far as I knew. The more I studied those carvings, the more unsettling the features on their faces seemed to me. I made a log fire and brought my bags inside from my truck since I felt that the isolation was getting to me. When I opened the goods I had purchased en route to put the milk and meat in the refrigerator, I smelled something foul and noticed a dead rat on the top shelf. It was beginning to shrivel and degrade, so it must have been in there for a time. I slammed the door shut because I couldn't figure out how a dead rat had gotten inside. Then the lights went out and the buzzing ceased before I had a chance to consider this further. It was the generator. I knew that. I knew that in order to switch it back on, I would have to brave the storm because it was in my uncle's workshop. I grabbed a flashlight as it was getting dark outside and walked slowly in the direction of the workshop. There were shelves upon shelves of those eerie animal carvings as I stepped inside and struggled with gloved fingers to unlock the door. I quickly walked by them, straight to the generator, and figured out how to restart it. I changed into some dry, warm clothes after returning to the cabin and locking myself in for the night. Something was on the rug in front of the fire when I got back. It was an owl, one of my uncle's eerie carvings. It wasn't there when I put it there, and there's no way I would have missed it. I was so alarmed by this that I made sure the cabin door was locked. I was horrified to realize that I might have trapped this person in there with me when I heard this creaking upstairs. As I ascended the steps, I held the largest animal carving I could locate like a weapon. There were only 2 rooms on the upstairs floor. I had thrown my stuff into my uncle's room and there was a spare room I hadn't yet visited. As I turned on the light and pulled open the door to the spare room, I could feel my heart racing. I let out a terrified gasp upon realizing I wasn't alone. Humming to himself, a man with long, disheveled hair and torn clothes slid something along the windowsill. He turned around and bared his crooked teeth at me as soon as he heard me. He glared at me and knocked something over from the windowsill. It was another one of those eerie animal carvings with faces. After taking some in his arms and opening the window, he looked at me one final time before jumping out of the window and sending a blast of snow flying into the room. I hurried over and looked out, observing him sprinting through the snowdrift while holding the sculptures in his arms. The storm was too strong to drive anywhere, so I closed the window, locked the door, and was left to wait it out. It required several days for the storm to pass. I was eager to get out of that cabin, but as soon as I opened the front door, I noticed that same unsettling owl carving protruding from the snow. I departed from the cabin and haven't returned since. I never reported it because, although it may sound horrible, who would want to buy it if they believed some crazy guy may break in and do strange things? I have no idea who he was or why he found my uncle's eerie sculptures so fascinating. Although I don't think I'll ever know, I do know one thing. I will never return to the log cottage in the woods.